Okay, so you've got this killer invention idea, right? You know, that thing you just know the world needs.
Hmm.
But how do you actually go from like that initial spark to a real product,
Right.
like on the shelves?
Exactly.
Well, guess what? We've got Lori Greiner's playbook to help us out today.
And who better? Right. She literally wrote, invent it, sell it, bank it.
Talk about a queen of product development. I mean, Shark Tank investor, queen of QVC. This woman knows what she's doing.
She knows what sells, that's for sure. Whether it's on TV or, these days online, everywhere, really.
And let me tell you, this book, it's seriously like a secret weapon for inventors. Lori holds nothing back, real-world examples, insider tips, the
No
works.
kidding.
One thing that really blew my mind was this hero or zero checklist she's got. It's on page 49 if you want to flip there.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
But basically, it helps you figure out if your invention has what it takes before you sink tons of time and money into it.
Crucial.
Yeah.
That's huge. It's like a gut check, but, way more thorough.
And it's not just about the invention itself, right? It's about you as an entrepreneur, too.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
because you're going to need some serious passion to stick with this. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
So true. But I love that she asks, are you ready to put in the work?
Because, let's face it, you have to be.
100%. And speaking of make or break questions, there's this one in her checklist that I think every inventor needs to ask themselves. Does this solve a real problem?
It sounds so simple, right?
It does.
But honestly, so many people get hung up on having a cool idea without thinking, like, does anyone even need this?
They fall in love with the idea.
Exactly. And Laura gives this great example comparing, say, those disposable razors versus, like, a fancy piece of jewelry.
Okay, yeah.
One's a need, the other's a want. And needs, they tend to win, especially, like, when the economy's not doing so hot.
Makes you think. I mean, that's something you could easily miss in all the excitement of a new idea.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And another thing, and this is especially true if you're, say, thinking about going the QVC route, your product needs to be demonstrable.
Oh, that's a good
It
point.
needs to have that wow factor,
Yeah.
something you can actually show working, not just, talk about.
Seeing is believing, as they say.
Exactly. Nobody wants to just hear you describe how amazing something is.
Hmm.
They want to see it in action.
Makes total sense. And that probably plays into why Lori's such a big advocate for going after a broad target market.
Oh, 100%. The bigger the audience, the more potential customers you have.
Right. So it's about finding that thing that resonates with a lot of people.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say you got your hero idea, right? You're fired up, you're ready to dive in.
Love it.
Where do you even begin?
So much easier said than done. Right. Where do you even start?
Right. It can feel super overwhelming. You're like, okay, I've got this amazing idea.
Yeah.
Now what?
Now what?
But Lori breaks it down, and it's really cool. She's all about like starting with a mock-up.
A mock-up. So not like, fancy 3D printers and all that right away.
No, no, not at
Mhm.
all. And that's what's so great about it. A mock-up is just about like getting your hands dirty,
Okay.
bringing that idea to life, using whatever you've got, cardboard, clay, I don't know, stuff from your junk drawer. It doesn't matter. I love it.
It's really about understanding like the design, the functionality,
Okay.
before you get into the nitty-gritty of a real prototype.
Right. So you kind of get to play around with it first. to start.
Exactly. Exactly. And then once you kind of got the design down, then you can level up to a prototype.
Yeah.
And that's where, yeah, 3D printing can be amazing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's becoming so much more accessible these days.
It really is.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's talk manufacturing for a second. Let's say your prototype's looking good, you're feeling great, you're ready to find somebody to actually make this thing.
Right.
What are some like traps that people fall into in that stage?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of the biggest mistakes is jumping into manufacturing too quickly without really doing your homework. And Lori tells this crazy story about these people who invented a baby bag.
Oh no. What happened?
And they learned this the hard way. It's pages 62 to 64 if you want to check it out later. But
Oh,
yeah, let's just say it did not go well.
that's gotta hurt. So, okay, how do you avoid that? What does Lori recommend?
She's a huge, huge advocate of finding a manufacturer that specializes in your type of product. She uses the example of like,
Mhm.
you wouldn't go to a handbag maker to make, a suitcase.
Right. Of course not.
It seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's not just about finding the right manufacturer. It's about protecting what's yours.
Oh, you mean like legally protecting your idea?
Exactly. Your intellectual property. You've poured your heart and soul into this thing. That's where patents and trademarks come in.
Okay.
And Lori, again, she breaks it all down, pages 158, 176, 177, different types, why it matters.
I was going to say, it can seem so confusing.
Oh, it can be a maze, but it's so important to understand. It's about protecting yourself.
Right, because this is your creation. This is your baby.
Exactly, making sure that you're the one reaping the rewards.
100%.
Okay, so you've got your prototype, you found a manufacturer, you've got it legally protected, feeling good.
I'd be over the moon at this point, honestly.
Right, you're like, I'm ready to launch this thing.
Let's do it.
But this is just the beginning.
Oh, no. What?
There's more.
There's always more. Now you've got to make it sell.
Okay, so how do you do that? Where do you even start with that? Well, I think one of the biggest pitfalls is assuming that just because you love your product, everybody else will.
Oh, I can see that. It's easy to get, like, blinded by your own excitement.
Exactly. It's like you're so close to it.
Yeah.
And that's where market research is key.
Okay.
You've got to know for sure that there's actually a demand for this thing.
Right, so it's not enough for it to just sound good in your head.
Right. You've got to get it out there.
So how do you recommend people go about getting that feedback?
Okay, so Lori has like a whole system for this, pages 72 through 75, if you want to really dive in. But it basically boils down to three things:
Okay, lay it on me.
anonymity, specific questions, and getting it in front of a lot of different people, a large cross-section.
I was going to say a big enough group of people.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So anonymity, so people feel comfortable being honest.
Yes,
Nobody's holding back. Right, specific questions, so you're getting at, like, the things that you actually need to know.
exactly. You're not wasting time.
And then making sure that, like, the people that you're talking to are representative of who you actually think your customer's going to be.
Exactly. It's about getting a realistic picture, right?
Okay.
Like, how is this thing going to fly in the real world?
Okay, love it.
And once you kind of have that feedback, then you can start thinking about pricing.
Ooh, okay. Pricing. That feels like a whole other, like, can of worms.
It can be, but Lori has a really good way of breaking it down. You've got to consider, like, what are your manufacturing costs? What's your competition doing?
Yeah.
And here's a big one. What's the perceived value of your invention?
Perceived value. That's interesting. What does that even mean?
So it's basically, what are people willing to pay for this thing? Which isn't always directly tied to, like, how much it actually costs to make, right?
Right, that's interesting.
So Lori uses the example of, like, a high-end handbag versus something generic. Materials might be pretty similar, but the brand, the design,
The feeling.
yes, there's a whole feeling attached to it.
Yeah.
And that's going to justify a higher price tag.
Right, so it's like that perceived value versus actual value.
Yeah. It's fascinating. So you're really trying to hit that sweet spot, right? Where people feel like, okay, this is worth my money, but you're also turning a profit.
Right. Got to make some money.
Exactly. Speaking of making money, let's talk marketing.
Okay, yes. This is where it gets fun.
This is it. This is where you get to see your baby out in the world.
Right, getting the word out, building buzz. So exciting.
Exactly. But it can
Mhm.
also feel overwhelming because Lori talks about everything, right? Social media, TV shopping channels.
Right, there's so many different ways to get your product out there these days.
It's a lot. But the key is finding, like, what works for your product, what works for your audience.
Right, what's going to resonate?
Exactly. And for Lori, there's one avenue that's obviously near and dear to her heart.
QVC, of course. The queen of QVC herself.
Mm-hmm.
But before we, like, dive into the world of TV shopping, I have to tell you the story Lori tells
Oh, here we go.
about how she almost missed her big break with HSN.
Oh, no way.
It's such a good story. Pages 128 and 129. It's all about, like, a last-minute phone call,
No way.
a buyer who was literally walking out the door,
Oh, my gosh.
and, like, this shared hometown connection that changed everything.
Get out of here.
Seriously, you've got to read it. Talk about right place, right time. But okay, back to QVC.
Right.
I feel like some people might be thinking, isn't TV shopping a little, old school?
Yeah.
But Lori makes a really good argument for why it's still so powerful for new inventors, especially.
Totally. Even in the age of, like, everybody shops online.
Right, social media.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's something about TV shopping that's just, like, it's human.
Okay.
You could read product descriptions online, scroll through a million pictures, but there's something about seeing it, like, in action,
Oh, 100%.
demonstrated by a real person.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
just creates a whole other level of, like, engagement.
And trust.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, you see those commercials, as seen on TV, there's like a magic to that.
Totally. It's its own genre. almost.
It is. And Lori's got a great example. It's on page 131 about this product, FiberFix.
Oh, yeah.
And she was like, I knew this product was amazing,
Mm.
but it wasn't until people saw it on PV, actually saw how strong it was, how it worked.
Right.
That's when the sales really took off.
It makes a huge difference.
It does. But I have to say, like, the thought of being on live TV is terrifying.
Oh, I know.
But Lori gives you a little peek behind the scenes at QVC,
Yeah.
and it sounds like a wild ride.
It sounds intense.
It does. She talks about it on pages 140 and 141, but it's like, they're setting the stage. Everything's got to be perfect.
Right.
It's high energy. You got to be on the entire time.
It's like a performance.
It is. 100%.
You've got one shot to get it right.
So what does this all mean for our listeners who are, listening to this and they've got their own invention idea brewing?
I think, more than anything, Lori's story and the advice she gives in this book, it's that it's not enough to just have a good idea.
Right.
It really is about passion and persistence and just putting in the work
So much work.
and understanding,
Yeah.
Who's going to buy this.
Yeah. Who's your customer?
Yeah. Protecting it legally.
Yeah. All that stuff we talked about.
All of it matters.
Yeah.
And finding those right avenues to actually get your product out there.
Yes. And I love what you said about passion because it's so easy to get discouraged, right?
100%.
So you have to really believe in what you're doing.
And you have to kind of enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Because it is a process and it's going to have ups and downs.
100%. There are going to be those moments where you're like, why did I do this?
Oh, yeah.
But then you have those wins and it's like,
Oh, so worth it.
all worth it. So on that note, we want to leave you with this. Lori's story is all about action. So what's one step that you can take, whether it's big or small, to move that invention of yours forward?
I love that.
Maybe it's sketching it out.
Mm.
Maybe you're going to do some research on manufacturers or talk to somebody who's done this before. Every journey starts with a single step, right?
It does. And you never know. Your invention could be the next big thing.
Exactly.